distributive property. You will need pencil and paper, or you will need whiteboard and markers. So take something that you can write with, and of course, get ready to type some answers in the chat. I think I prefer that way. It's easiest. Distributive property. Let me give you several examples of what the distributive property is. Now, the word distributive has this word distribute in it, distribute. And if I'm breaking down this word and I hear the word distribute, that means that you are going to take something out and kind of that everything take something out that involves everything or all the numbers. So for today, distributive property, if I were to show you a problem such as 9 plus 15, I'm going to use a factor. Okay, I'm using all this vocabulary that you should be studying and should have studied over the last 2 weeks and that we've been talking about. I'm going to take the factors and I'm going to distribute them. All right, and what that means is it looks like this. Distributive property, I'm going to break down what times what equals 9. And I know 3 times 3 equals 9. All right, and I'm also going to factor out 15. So I have 9 here plus, and don't forget your plus sign. Here's my plus sign, got to bring it down. The factors of 15, or 5 times 3, okay? So if I'm breaking down these numbers, like we've been doing using factor trees and finding prime factorization, we're finding the factors of here, and this part is where we actually distribute these numbers, okay? I'm finding a factor that they have in common. The greatest common factor here is 3, because I have a 3 from the 9 and a 3 from the 15. And I'm going to take those out of the problem that I have written here. So I have a 3 that I have taken out, and I will distribute that to the rest of the problem. So I still have times 3 here. So 3, so times. Remember when we did order of operations, anytime you put a number right next to a parentheses, it means multiply. So I don't have to put this multiplication sign because this automatically means multiply. But I have a 3 here, a plus sign that I still haven't used, and a 5 on this side, 3 plus 5. So this distributive property, if I were to take 9 plus 15, and you think, well, golly, Miss Bragg, why don't we just add 9 plus 15 to equal 24? Sure, that's fine and good in grade school, but we are moving on to more algebraic thinking. So if you do it this way, you are factoring out the greatest common factor, and we're going to distribute that to the rest of the problem. That's a lot of vocabulary I'm throwing at you this morning. But if you look at this and you say, okay, now I'm going to use my order of operations and take 3 plus 5, which is 8. And then 8 times 3 is indeed 24, which is the same thing as 9 plus 15, or 24. But the distributive property takes this simple problem and breaks it down. It uses math skills and properties of numbers to write the distributive property. So the answer of 9 plus 15, the answer in the distributive property form here is 3 times 3 plus 5, because you take out the factor that they have in common. All right, let's do several of these. I want to do several examples because, again, that was the first time you've seen it, and I'm sure you would like to see many more examples before I try to give you some on your own. Here's a simple problem, 12 plus 20. We're going to first break down 12 and 20 using factors. 12 breaks down to 3 times 4. Okay, 3 times 4. And 20 breaks down to 4 times 5. Okay, don't forget to include the plus sign. Okay, you have to use everything that's in the original problem. So we broke down 12 to equal 3 times 4 plus 4 times 5, which equals 20. And I'm feeling pretty good about these numbers because I can see that they have a number in common, a factor in common. They both have a 4 in common, which is the greatest factor that they have in common. Therefore, I'm going to take these 4s out. I'm going to distribute them amongst the rest of the numbers. And what we have left is are the parentheses, of course. So I put the parentheses in here, okay, which means multiply 4 times. We have a 3 left from the 12 plus the 5 left from the 20. And so 12 plus 20 written as a distributive property would equal 4 times 5 plus 3. Again, this is using a lot of the lessons that we've kind of put together, which is why I wanted to kind of see where you were this morning with that quiz and see if how you're doing on the vocabulary that we've used so far in these problems. Okay, here's another one. Now I'm going to leave. I can't really leave that yet. Okay, 15 plus 21. 15 plus 21. Step 1, break down both problems into 2 factors that you can multiply by each other to get each of these numbers. So 15, what times what equals 15? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Christopher, you're absolutely right. Hashtag how to make addition hard. I love that. That's great. All right. Yes, you all know that 3 times 5 is 15. All right. The next thing you do to make sure you don't forget is to bring down the plus sign. All right. Now we're going to do 21. What times what equals 21? Yes, thank you very much. Good. I'm getting lots of right answers coming in very fast. Very, very good. So 3 times 7 is 21. Now, the next question, which factor do they both have in common? Which factor do they both have in common? Thank you, Bryce, Aaron, Angel, Chloe, Leslie, Alexis, Kaya, Priscilla, Angie. Oh my goodness, I can't say the names that fast. Ashley, I think you have a typo there. They both have a 3 in common. Since they have a 3 in common, and we've been talking about common factors, greatest common factors, I'm going to distribute that 3. In other words, I'm going to take it out and distribute it to everything else that's inside the parentheses. I have a 5 left from the 15. I have a plus sign, and I still have a 7 left from the 21. Therefore, 15 plus 21 written as the distributive property is 3 times 5 plus 7. And if you wanted to double check that, you can always say 5 plus 7 is 12, and 12 times 3 is 36, same as 15 plus 21 equaling 36. All right, let's do another one. I'm going to give you one this time and have you solve it on your own. What about the other 3? This is the one they have in common. When you take it out of the parentheses, then that means you distribute it and you only have to take it out once because this 3 now multiplies by everything inside the parentheses. That's why it's called distributive, because you take this number and you distribute it to everything that's left inside the parentheses. Does that help, Priscilla? I circled it because it's the one they have in common, and from 15 and 21 both have a 3 in common. I guess, okay. Yeah, that's okay. It's interest. It's a very, this is a heavy lesson on a Wednesday for us, on a windy Wednesday. All right, how about this one? Let's try 30 plus 42. Okay, step 1, break down your numbers using your factors. Go ahead, you can type in the chat, what times what equals 30? Oh yeah, I got some answers already. This is fantastic. Oh, yes, yes, yes. All right, some of you guys are giving me the single answer and some of you guys are giving me the final answer. I see, and this is what's interesting, is I see a couple of options here. 30, most people look at 30 and say, hey, 5 goes into 30. So I'm going to pick 5 times 6 to go into 30, plus, don't forget the plus sign, two numbers that multiply together to equal 42. All right, yep, there you go. 7 times 6, 7 times 6 is 42. And find the factor that they have in common. And I'm actually going to share something a little bit different with you on this side, just because there's a little bit of an art to this as well. 30 plus 42. I'm going to show you the exact same problem, but I'm going to create a problem within the problem. Okay. 6 times 7 is about the only way to get 42. I suppose you could say 21 times 2. However, 6 times 7 is the most common way to find 42. 30. I saw some people say, well, 3 times 10 is 30, and that is true. 3 times 10 is 30, and they are all factors. But my question would be, do they have any common factors here? If there are no common factors, you want to look and see if there's another way to equal 30, maybe one that includes the number 6. And then you could say, oh, yes, I know that 6 times 5 is 30 as well. Now they have a 6 in common. Okay? If they don't have a common factor and it's asking you to write distributive property, you're going to have to kind of use your math skills in finding factors, and this is where greatest common factor comes into play. Greatest common factor. Finding the greatest common factor. If you can't think of a greatest common factor, you can list them out and say, man, I know 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 all go into 30. Okay, all these numbers go into 30. All right, now this, again, it's a long process. This is why math skills and being able to break down numbers and find the properties of numbers are so important. But yes, they do have a 6 in common. So we're going to distribute that outside of the parentheses. In other words, take it out. That's something they have in common. And then you bring down the rest. I have a 5 left from the 30 at the plus sign. Don't forget the plus sign. And I have a 7 left from the 42. So 30 plus 42 written as the distributive property is 6 times 5 plus 7. Angie, could you do it like this? Ah, that's an excellent question, Angie. I'm actually gonna write that down here because that was a great question. All right, Angie. Angie said, hey, we did prime factorization. I know that 2 times 5 times, I'm sorry, 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 5 is 30. So yes, that is your prime factorization for 30. Plus, let's see here, we have 2 times 3 is 6 times 7 is 42. That's prime factorization for 42. Yes, if you can break down to it all of your very prime factors, and we did this one yesterday, we found what they have in common. They have a 2 and a 3 in common, which is 6. So since 2 times 3 is 6, they both have those in common. You can still take that outside of the parentheses and bring down what's left inside the parentheses. So 5, the plus sign here between parentheses, and the 7. So you would still get the same answer this way if you used the original prime factorization way. Okay? Yes, excellent point. Excellent point. Thank you. Great question, Angie. Bonus points for you. All right, let's do a couple more, and then we will move on to the next thing. All right, let's take 44 and 48. 44 and 48. and break it down first. Drake, if it's asking you for a distributive property, it should have a greatest common factor. It will have a factor. Every number has one number in common, but these will all have a number larger than one, okay, that is in common. So Drake, unless you can give me another example, but this is preparing you for some more algebraic concepts, because when we start using letters or variables to represent numbers, then this distributive property is going to be even more important and a heavier weight. Yes, very good. 44 is 4 times 11, or 2 times 2 times 11, plus 48. What times what equals 48? Isabella, that is one answer, but you didn't take out the greatest common factor. There you go. Yes, 4 times 12. So Isabella, the 4 is actually the greatest common factor, because both 44 and 48 both have a 4 in it. So I'm going to take out the 4 and distribute that amongst the rest of the numbers. You have 4 times 11 and plus sign, you have a 4 times 12. All right. Yes, there you go. Forgot about that factor pair. And again, if you wanted to list it like Angie had suggested, you could put 2 times 2 times 11. Let me do that in a different color so it sticks out a little bit more. All right. This is the same thing as saying 2 times 2 times 11 and 2 times 2 times 12, or times 2 times 2 times 3. But you notice that they both still have 2 times 2 in common, which is 4, which is the greatest common factor here. Okay, and the final answer is not 92. Okay, as much as you want to just say, hey, 44 plus 48 is 92, I'm not asking you to solve the problem. I'm asking you to write it using distributive property. So I'm asking you to write it this special way. Okay. And the only reason I mention the final answer is to check yourself. So if I were to go back and check myself and say, oh, 44 plus 48 is 92, 11 plus 12 is 23, times 4 is also 92. That's just a way to check yourself to make sure these two equal each other. Okay, but this is not the final answer. 92 is not the final answer. The final answer is the distributive property. Okay, final answer looks like this. Let's do another one. How about 35 plus 50? Okay, you try it and type your answers into the chat, please. Just want to kind of see how it's going. If you break it down, yep, that's the start, Leah. That's how you start it. Absolutely. First, break down each number. Angel, good. That's how you start it. Destiny, that's not how you write the final answer. Yes, Erin. Yes, Isabella. Yes, Brooklyn. Yes, Angel. Hayden, that's not how you write the final answer. The final answer needs to look like this distributive property. So you'll have the greatest common factor on the outside of the parentheses, and you'll have the two numbers that are left, that have been left behind here, multiplied by that factor. Yes, the rest of you guys, let's see, Bryce, Angie, Aubrey, good, good, good. Marie, Inez, Liliana, Rosie, Ashley. All right, we're getting the hang of this thing. Kindlin's close. All right, let's make sure that you have exactly what I have. Check your whiteboards. Aubrey, that's not how you write the final answer. So 35 plus 50, using the distributive property. You guys all said that 5 times 7 equals 35. And means plus, 50. You have 5 times 10 equals 50. And these are great numbers to use because automatically I see that they have a 5 in common, and that is the greatest common factor. So I bring it outside of the parentheses, I distribute that out, and I use the rest. I have a 7 left from the 35 and plus sign. I have a 10 left from the 50, and those do go inside the parentheses. Typos, yes, I get it. Make sure that, so this is how you write your final answer. 5 parentheses, 7 plus 10, close parentheses. All right, 5 parentheses, 7 plus 10, close parentheses. And I gotta say, I understand that this is a very heavy lesson, and I'm actually, since you already took a test today for math, I am not going to give you an assignment for today for math. I'm going to save this and I'm going to revisit it. I saw that Vincent, he's doing the happy dance. But it is fun. I'm so glad that you enjoy this and working with numbers and manipulating numbers. We will revisit this again in another lesson, but right now I just wanted you to be familiar with it because this distributive property distributes the greatest common factor to the other factors of the numbers that you're trying to add. And that is in your vocabulary. So I at least wanted you to have a little heads up about what that looks like. Okay? Hope you took a few notes and I hope you accidentally learned something today. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hartman. I believe my time is up, unless we want to give a quick break from all that melting brain power.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. Mr. Mullen, are you there? Assessment, we'll come back. And those of you who need to finish, we'll go ahead and do that at 11 o'clock. So we're gonna have to make the switch now here. So you can go ahead and stop taking the assessment. To our knowledge, you should be able to log back in here in a few minutes and finish taking it in a bit. But for right now, we're gonna turn things over to Mr. Mullen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartman. I'm gonna share my screen with you and we're going to go to, again, the story that we've been looking at for a while for this week, Betsy and Sal. And yesterday we were talking about, started talking about this last week, but that in narrative, we have this thing where we can track feelings or emotions in each character. And as we look at those characters, we track their emotion, that as a narrative goes and proceeds through the story, that we should notice that there's an intensification that's happening, an escalation that's happening. Escalation, we usually use that term in terms of the problem or the conflict, but also in the terms of an escalation of feeling. The feeling becomes more intense as time goes by. And that's what I wanted to show you yesterday with our assignment. So I'm going to share with you an assignment. And we were looking at 3 characters. We were looking at Pa, we were looking at Emmy, and we were looking at Ma. And this person did a fairly good job of going through. They could have added a little bit more to Pa, because Pa certainly at the end, page 10, everybody, and we'll add that to him, page 10, everybody had some kind of strong feeling, right, at the end of the story. But what I want us to do is just look at how these emotions in each character, how they progress, how they intensify. I like how, this is Tiffany, and I like how she did it with Ma the best. That she's thought that Ma is nervous and she's grumpy. then she's downright displeased, and then she's annoyed and angry, and then finally you see a big rush of emotion when she is on page 10, petrified. Okay, Emmy is worried. I think she's terrified. I think that, you know, you have these emotions that happen at the end, because what's happening at the end, right? They're worried about Rose, baby Rose. Papa is, I think if you were to say how he feels, he might have even say he feels sickened, okay, in page 10, because of what he was trying to get the horses to do, right? So what I want you to understand is that as the story, a narrative progresses from the beginning and goes through the middle and ends, that the emotions should intensify. They should intensify. Okay. And let's see. Let's look at some of these. And this is very, very short. I want you to be able to finish this tomorrow. I said I wanted it done today, but we also want to look at a couple of these and see how that works. Let's go to page 2. No, let's go to page 3. Okay. Page 3. All I want you to do is listen to this. Okay. You can look at it or read it as well. Page 3. Tractors could do this, tractors could do that. I was sick and tired of hearing about who bought what kind of tractor or how much more efficient they were than horses. Now, this paragraph right here, we have to infer, we have to read between the lines or behind the line, behind the story. We have to get behind the words to the feeling. And how is she feeling? You know, we're talking about Emmy. How is Emmy feeling? She's frustrated or she's annoyed, isn't she? Okay. Now let's go to page 6. This is another place where we have to infer. We have to look for what's implicit, what is behind the story, what is behind the words. Ma stood with her arms folded across her belly, the way she always did when she was angry. Okay, now this is inferred, but now they make it explicit. Paul looked at her a second and quietly said, now this reveals his feelings. I'm doing what's best for this family. So Ma, you could say it, even says it, she's angry. What is Paul right there? What's he feeling? Maybe he's feeling a little bit like he's out by himself, that he's alone in all of this, isn't he? And that's a powerful feeling as well. Now I want to go to the very, very end. And we're going to start right here with page 8. And we're going to go through to 11. And I want us to talk about the escalation of feelings, the intensification of feeling. Get up, Paul shouted, slapping the reins across their broad backs. But the horses refused to budge. They had never behaved like that before. I said, move, Paul hollered. He stood up, he grabbed the whip. Paul had never used it on him before. But suddenly he began lashing Betsy and Sal over and over. The horses squealed, tossed their huge heads, but they would not move. Now, again, let's read behind the lines. Why is Paul so angry at the horses? You know, why is he using the whip? First time he's ever used the whip. Why is he doing that? Could it be that he's so frustrated with everything else, the whole family drama, that he's taking it out on the horses? On Betsy and Sal? Okay, let's go on. Oh, Gladys gasped. She dropped her basket of beans. I watched her stumble towards the wagons as the bean pods spilled onto the ground. Now, here too, right here, this is important. It's very, it's something that you see, right? She is in shock. She's feeling shocked, but she's going into action, and she drops her basket of beans. All that she worked for that morning and picking the beans and gathering those beans, that they're falling onto the ground, and she doesn't even care. I watched her stumble towards the wagon as the bean pods spilled onto the ground. See? So there's a lot of emotion that's taking, a lot of feeling that's taking place right now. Pa, stop, cried Gladys, pointing to the front wheel. Ma came out of the house, looked where Gladys was pointing, and let out a blood-curdling scream. Again, see how it's getting more and more intense? It made the world freeze in deep silence. The breeze stopped blowing, the birds quit singing. I'm sure my heart stopped beating. Ma streaked across the scene, leaping off the porch, hurrying over to the wagon. I could see her scoop up a bundle of blankets into her arms. I could see Pa drop the whip. Why were they so upset about some old blankets? But then I looked closer and realized that wrapped up deep inside those blankets was baby Rose. So maybe, you know, when we start talking about Emmy, and we look at these last pages, that she's worried, she's concerned, she doesn't really understand everything that's going on. Ma understands, okay? Gladys understands, and eventually even Pa understands, but Emmy is a little bit left out of understanding the precarious situation that baby Rose is in. And so her feelings don't become quite so intense, do they? But then I looked closer and I realized that wrapped up deep inside those blankets was baby Rose. In an instant, I was running faster than I'd ever run. Ma was sobbing. My sisters and I gathered around her. I saw my own terror mirrored in every eye. See, we have a lot of emotions, a lot of feeling coming up. Pa jumped down to the ground. Is she all right? He whispered. Ma unwrapped the blankets with trembling hands. Baby Rose, always happy to be the center of attention, smiled at us and made her gurgling noises. Everyone started laughing and crying and talking and hugging, somehow all at the same time. Okay? Now, do you see now, even right here, laughing, crying, talking, hugging, all at the same time? We're talking about, we reached a very, very intense moment, and now it's beginning to dissipate. Everything is beginning to relax again, okay? Sometimes in narratives, what we're talking about when we talk about conflict is something that comes and upsets the status quo, and how the whole story, status quo is how things are. So when we have a narrative and we have a problem, and the resolution or the trying to solve the problem is about coming to that place where things are back to where they were, or a place of peace or a place of harmony again. Sometimes stories end up that you do not achieve that, but there's always a striving when trying to overcome the problem for a peace or a harmony at the end of the story. This time, this story, you end up achieving that peace and harmony. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, now listen, if you need to look at that and improve your charting the feelings, you have permission. At least I didn't make it due until Friday, but you need to get it in and you need to give it some thought, okay? And honestly, if you give a good good try. I'm pretty confident that your teacher, I know that I will, you'll get a generous grade as long as you give a good effort for this. I've noticed that we don't know our feelings, words for feelings, as well as we should. And we need to, and we will be working on shades of meaning in the future. Vocabulary is something we need to improve. And so that'll be something we continue to do so in reading in the next few weeks till Christmas. And I have no homework for today. You do have a test tomorrow in vocabulary. Make sure you're ready for it, okay? Mr. Hartman, we only have 12 minutes. Did you want to do anything, Mr. Hartman?
Yeah, I think we'll, yeah, we got about 10 minutes. I might be able to cover the other essay. So I'll go ahead and do that. Are they cleared for takeoff here?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and got this up. All right. So I'm going to share the screen here. All right, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Sorry about the whole assessment situation. That took a bit longer than we anticipated. So no worries. We'll get it done. We'll get through it. So those of you who actually took the time to do it and take care of business, we appreciate it. Okay. So yesterday we looked at the deadly closet. So this was an essay taken from my class. And what we did was we went through and we looked at these items right here. So we wanted to see if it focused on one main event. We wanted to see if it tells the actions of the writers. So what they're doing physically, like how they are moving through space. It tells what others around the writer are doing. It tells what the writer was thinking at the time of the action, tells what the writer was feeling during the action, and then it describes the scene. So again, these are all elements of a personal narrative. And then it sort of comes back to these questions. And really, these are just slight variations of this list that we have here. So the 5 media questions, we're calling them. So what did you do when this happened? What were those around you doing? What were you thinking? How did you feel? Can you describe what you saw? So that's what we were working on yesterday. And we looked at the deadly closet yesterday for what others around us were doing. So this paragraph here was not nearly as lengthy as it is now. We just sort of, all we did was discuss more about what the brother was saying and doing. So we just added some dialogue. So a couple of months later, my closet was full of dirty clothes. I kept piling them inside anyway. My brother saw me throwing my laundry on the closet floor. He raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing? Why don't you just put your dirty laundry in the hamper?" said my brother. I thought about what he said. My schedule is really busy. I have distance learning in the morning and I have Fortnite in the afternoon. It's really a time issue. My brother nodded. I could see him taking in all of this information. That's a good idea. A real time saver, said my brother, stroking his chin. He had a pile of dirty laundry on his bed. He grabbed the pile and tossed it onto the closet floor. Problem solved. After all of our dirty clothes were piled in the closet, we both went out to play. All right. So, and then we did the same thing with mom here in the second paragraph. I believe it was Josie. We sort of stole Josie's contribution and plugged it in here. I was just minding my own business, doing stuff, throwing my clothes on the floor, but then my mom came in. She opened my closet, and do you want to know what she saw? She saw 2 big piles of stinky clothes. My mom turned around with a deadly stare. What is this? I constantly clean up after you two. I do the dishes. I clean up after the pets. I do everything. I ask you guys to do one thing, just one, and you do this, grounded. You are grounded. Remember the beginning? I said, what's that smell in my nose? A weird stench. Man, did I smell that pretty quick. Okay, so that was, we did that for what others are thinking. So if we come back here, what were those around you doing? So we addressed that in that draft. So what were you thinking? That's the question that I want to look at right now. So we're going to go back into this essay, and does the author talk about what he or she was thinking? So it was when I was looking for something and then a weird stench came up in my nose. What is that? Now let's rewind. So one day I was just too lazy to put my clothes in the closet, so I left the pile on the floor. I kept leaving my clothes on the floor after each and every day, and soon it was a humongous pile of clothes. I did not care because I thought my mom would not know I did it. So yeah, I mean, we're pretty much the author is walking us through that. So yeah, I would say that is definitely what the author is thinking. So I'll go ahead and highlight that in green. A couple months later, my closet was full of dirty clothes, but I kept piling them inside anyway. So this is the author, and then of course we go. And then this is what the others, are doing. She opened my closet. So we'll talk about that. Sorry. You are grounded. So again, that's what others, what others are thinking. And what, remember at the beginning when I said, so okay, I'm going to put a comma here, a real quick grammar lesson. And this is grammar, like doing grammar worksheets, that kind of thing. None of the research supports it. And it's, you know, it's one of those things where it can be helpful, but I think covering conventions issues or like grammar issues in this sort of environment is best. This right here, if you look at this sentence, man, did I smell that pretty quick? You'll notice that I plugged in a comma after man. That's something that's referred to as direct address. So man, comma, did I smell that pretty quick? So in a situation like that, so if I said Mr. Mullen or Mrs. Bragg or Mrs. Digby, and I open the sentence that way, and then I had another thought, I'm gonna have a comma after their name because it's referred to as a direct address comma rule. So that's why I plugged that in right there. Okay, so, oh man, direct address. When I was cleaning that closet, oh, my nose was, because it was kind of furious at me because it smelled like an animal died in there. Well, that sums it up. What I learned about that is never put clothes where don't put clothes. Okay, I gotta go back. I gotta fix that because grammatically we're off base there. What I learned is never put dirty clothes on your closet floor. Okay, kind of a specific lesson. I try to make that a little And then this right here, we don't really need that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So we come back to, let's take a look at the other questions. Tells what writer's thinking, feeling, yeah. Describes the scene. We're a little light in that department. So I really don't know what the room looks like, or sort of like the space looks like. And it's not super urgent, but it would definitely help and put the reader in the scene a little more. So I would go back and add something along those lines. So overall, some final thoughts on this, and I don't think we're going to get to the other essay today because I want to take my time with One Little Monkey. It's a little bit longer, a little bit more detail, which is good, but we're going to break that down tomorrow. But this author, like I said, the basic structure is there, which is fantastic. So it's just a question of kind of going through the guiding questions here and making sure that we're hitting all of those marks. That's really, as long as you're focused on these driving questions, any kind of personal narrative is, you're going to be okay. At that point, once the general structure is taken care of, then you can focus more on making sure that you're using different types of sentences in your essay, and then you're free to work on more vocabulary as well. So then it becomes a word issue, like that went, that's kind of a dead verb. I think I can use something better. Or what's a really good specific verb, strong verb that I can use, and take it from there. So anyway, that's pretty much it. But like I said, the big takeaways for this right here, generally, like I'm still working through these essays and grading them. Overall, the structure is there. I think the next step for us is to really focus on making sure that we're answering these guiding questions with a fair amount of detail, making sure that we're using strong verbs, and then focusing on the different sentence types. So simple sentences when we're trying to communicate a really important point, and then a mixture of compound and complex sentences, and then focusing on our vocabulary. So like I said, strong verbs really make any type of writing, but especially a personal narrative, make a personal narrative move well. So, and it's just more entertaining for your reader as well. So that is it for today. It is 11 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this out to the other teachers. I have no problem with that. Do we want those people who haven't finished the test? Do we want to keep them here?
Yes, I have a list of kids who need to stay here, whether they're not done with Edulastic or the test from today. I have 15 kids that I need to call out.
Okay.